Hello everybody. Some old man back again. This is my second video of the day. I had the one I did before ready last night. I just didn't get to it because I was tired. I got it done this morning. But now I have the one that I planned to do today ready, and I wanted to go ahead and get it out of the way while I had a chance. How many of you live in a house where there's a tree planted in the yard as part of the landscaping? What benefit does that tree provide other than shade during the summer? 100 years ago in America, it was common for the trees in the yards outside our homes to be productive trees. Apple trees, chestnuts, peaches, and so on. This trend ended after World War II as our population became more mobile and people considered picking up all the extra fallen fruit as just one more inconvenience. They already had to rake up the leaves and mow the lawns of the houses. Having to pick up fruit that was falling on the ground because you just didn't pick it, that was just not good. And you didn't really need the fruit off the trees like they used to. It's just easier to go down to the grocery store and pick it up when you needed it. Down at the local grocery store. Have you been by your local grocery store to buy fresh fruit recently? If you expect to get California oranges, you may be out of luck. Washington apples, same thing. Even some of the produce that normally gets imported from outside the country isn't quite as available as it was in previous years. The climate disruptions experienced this year is influencing what crops are being harvested here in the United States and elsewhere. COVID-19 has caused disruptions in distribution, especially from distant locations. My point is, we're experiencing a change in the availability of goods. But for the purposes of this discussion, specifically fresh fruit, I would like to propose that you consider going back to some of the older ways if you can. Plant a fruit tree in your yard, if possible. It doesn't have to be a full-size tree. For instance, a mature apple tree could be 60 feet tall. You can't even harvest the apples on it very easily. If you have acreage and you want to, though, great. But if you're like me, you may have a few hundred square feet of yard and are limited in what you can do. Instead, go for a dwarf or semi-dwarf tree. That's a tree of whatever type, grafted onto rootstock that can only allow a certain amount of growth. Even a dwarf fruit tree, though, will produce a respectable amount of fruit once it's bearing and mature. What kind of tree do you ask? Well, where do you live? If you live in a northern tier state, Montana or something, don't expect to plant lemon and orange trees and coconuts and bananas. It just won't work. Likewise, if you live in a hot climate, southern tip of Florida, down on the bottom end of Texas or something where it's hot and humid, Alabama, you might have a hard time growing apples or cherries or some other variety that require cool or cold weather for the fruit to set. Most big producers of fruit trees will tell you what conditions a particular tree will require to thrive, the zone. I'll include links to some of these growers that I use. The time to plant a fruit tree in your yard is now since you can't go back and do it years ago. A typical fruit tree takes 3 to 5 years to begin producing a substantial amount of fruit, and that is if you buy the fruit as a 3-year-old sapling from the nursery. Figure that a tree takes about 10 years from the time it's planted as a seed for it to be useful. A long time, I know, but a full-size apple tree could be expected to produce fruit for decades, so the investment time is worth it. Am I telling you you should do this? No, I'm just suggesting it. But I practice what I preach. I have planted a dozen different fruit trees in my yard. They haven't all survived, and so far, I'm only seeing production out of 4 of them. A pear, a fig, and 2 peaches. But I continue to plant additional trees each year, and I hope eventually to have good production from pawpaw, a local southeast native tree, jujube from Asia, cherries, plums, maybe even a pomegranate. That's not even considering the fruit-bearing plants such as kiwi, strawberries, and blueberries that are also on my land, but we're talking trees right now. But when the fruit is in season, it's more than I can harvest. So it's a good idea when you plant more than one type of tree that they come bearing fruit at different times of the year. Think what it would mean if everyone in your neighborhood planted some kind of fruit tree with different houses growing varieties that bore fruit at different times. Some in May, some in June, some in July, August, September. I could see neighbors harvesting fruit from their trees and, oh, I've got so many peaches, I can't use these. I'll give them to my neighbor. And then later, your neighbor they're growing cherries. Here, have some cherries, have some apples. I can't use them all. I can't even can them all or dry them all if you're into food preservation. Do you think this might reduce our dependence on our broken supply chain? Plant a fruit tree. If you enjoyed this content, give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment to continue the discussion. Subscribe and click the bell notification button so you won't miss an episode when I post new content. This is some old man signing off.